What's going on, everybody? Welcome to LakerCentral. I was not expecting to give a reaction video or live stream to the James Harden news, but James Harden is a net, and there's already a lot of talk of how much better this makes the Nets. And let me just give you guys my reaction to it from a Lakers fan perspective. And so, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. Vinay and I will be going live for the pregame this evening at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. But I wanted to jump on here real quick and just share my thoughts, man, about this whole Nets James Harden thing. It's wild, right? Um, I feel like you go back to last season in the playoffs, and James Harden talked a lot of trash about the Lakers and having heart, and it didn't matter if the Rockets had a smaller roster or whatever. They didn't have a true center. It's all about heart, right? Well, the Lakers knocked out the Rockets in what, 5 games, gentleman's sweep, and then now this season, back-to-back games, the Lakers beat the Rockets by 35 points, completely decimated them. James Harden was a no-show. He clearly didn't want to be there in Brooklyn, or I'm sorry, in Houston anymore. And here you have it. Less than 24 hours later, he's traded. So, how do I feel about this just as a Lakers fan and somebody that's invested an inordinate amount of time in the Lakers? Good for Brooklyn. Good for Brooklyn. They got a third star. They did what they think they needed to do. Uh, I, I don't know. Like, does this make Brooklyn the best team in the East? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, Milwaukee's still very good, and the Heat surprised everybody last year. Boston is good, so I don't know. Look, the Nets did what they needed to do, so whatever. Um, Things are interesting with Kyrie Irving in the Nets because he hasn't been there in a while. There's the footage of him at a family member's birthday party. I would not have been surprised if Kyrie Irving would have been involved in this trade, but they managed to keep him. And at this point, the Nets, they've got three interesting guys: KD, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. From a sheer talent standpoint, those are three bad dudes. And they're probably going to win a lot of games, assuming Kyrie shows back up, assuming Harden plays himself back into shape, and assuming Kevin Durant is actually back at being top tier Kevin Durant. I don't know if he is. He's looked good in stretches. He's looked good for, in multiple games, but he sits out also. Brooklyn, they did what they had to do in order to make this thing work, and probably to appease Kevin Durant. Let me just say this really early in the stream: would not surprise me if Kyrie Irving eventually gets traded. Like, wouldn't surprise me at all. I don't know who wants him. I don't know if the Nets could get whatever equal value is for him, or what they think is equal value. But I wouldn't be surprised if Kyrie Irving eventually gets traded. But this trade, man, this trade is nuts, right? Like, you think of blockbusters. Obviously, Anthony Davis went to the Lakers, but Nets get James Harden, Rockets get Victor Oladipo, because this was a 3-team trade. I'm sure you guys know this at this point. So Nets get James Harden, Rockets get Victor Oladipo, Dante Exum, a dude named Kurucs, I don't know who that is, 3 Brooklyn first rounders, a Milwaukee first rounder, and 4 Brooklyn pick swaps. Absolutely nuts. The Pacers, Indiana Pacers, the third team in this whole thing, they get Caris, LeVert in a second rounder. And the Cavs get Jarrett Allen and Taurean Prince. Or it's a 4-team trade. I don't know why I thought it was a 3-team. I mean, not that the Cavaliers really matter at this point, but it's a 4-team trade. It's interesting that they were able to keep Spencer Dinwiddie, but he's hurt. He's out for the rest of the year. We'll see what happens with him. But just in terms of the Lakers don't care about this. Like, are the Nets better? Look, you add an MVP player, and if his mind is right, of course they're better. But as Lakers fans and as people that invest a lot of time in the Lakers aren't worried about Brooklyn. Like, if Brooklyn's a real threat, we won't even know about that until the finals. And when you look at last year, and everyone thought that Milwaukee was headed to the finals, Milwaukee ended up not getting to the finals. Like, everyone thought it would either be the Lakers in Milwaukee or the Clippers in Milwaukee. No one thought the Heat would be there, and so there is something to continuity of roster year over year. It's something to players and coaches and ownership and management being on the same page. There's something to that. Right now, the Lakers have the best record in the NBA. They are the most complete team in the NBA. And if you guys know anything about me, if you listen to the podcast, you watch these streams, you follow me on Twitter, you know that I'm all about stacking talent. You get all the talent you can, and then you let these guys figure it out in the long run. And traditionally, the most talented team usually wins. Like, that's how this thing normally works. It's rare when the most talented team does not win. But the Nets are good. I'm just not. Me personally, as a Lakers fan, like, I really don't care. Like, if there are people out there that's upset that James Harden, went to Brooklyn, to me that probably has more to do with teams in the Eastern Conference. Like, at this point, if the Nets are right and all these guys are playing, well, I don't know where that leaves Boston. I mean, Boston's got Tatum and Brown, and they got good defenders. Could they beat the Nets? Certainly. They could certainly beat the Nets in a 7-game series. The Heat probably could as well. And then, obviously, Milwaukee, who got much better with Drew Holiday. So, it's probably fans of the East that are more upset. If you're a Lakers fan, you're looking at this thing, and I'm scrolling through Twitter. That's why I'm looking over. I don't see that Lakers fans even care. Like, the Nets roster, Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, DeAndre Jordan, Joe Harris, Landry Shamet, Tyler Johnson. You know what I see when I see this? They don't have anybody to guard LeBron James and nobody to guard Anthony Davis. That's what I see. And I see a team that doesn't have anybody that can guard Dennis Schroeder. Kyrie's not great on defense, so he's, what are they going to do? What are the Nets going to do that's going to worry the Lakers? And when you think about the Lakers, even if you think that they have weaknesses, wait until the buyout market when some team wants to tank and get rid of all their veteran players, and the Lakers will pick up another veteran guy that on the cheap that wants a ring hunt and further strengthen this team. So, if anything for Brooklyn, this gives the Nets some Kyrie insurance. Like, I don't know what the heck is going on with that guy, but now you've got 2 MVPs if Kyrie isn't coming back, or he's probably going to come back, but he's going to have to set out, I would imagine, for 10 to 14 days. Now you've got James Harden. The question for Harden is, like, you wanted this. Are you going to play yourself back into shape? And what happens if this thing doesn't work, right? They end up losing 2 or 3 games in a row, or they go through a rough stretch. How's Kyrie going to react? How's Kevin Durant going to react? I mean, no one seems to know. But just specifically from the Lakers' point of view, this isn't a big deal. Let me go through here and see what some people's reactions are. And we're going to get into this, I'm sure, when we do the pregame for the Lakers-Thunder game this evening with Finney. But just right now, guys, like, it simply does not matter. You see in the highlights I got rolling here, Lakers went into Houston. They were up 30 points. Like, they just crushed them. And Harden's reaction to losing to the Lakers, basically just saying, the team, screw the team, they're not good enough. And I love what DeMarcus Cousins said. Like, the disrespect started long before that press conference last night. Like, Harden didn't want to be in Houston. And the thing about Houston is, you bring in a combustible owner and Tim Fertitta. He gets rid of Daryl Morey. He gets rid of Mike D'Antoni. And you get a situation with a combustible superstar player. But not only that, like, this isn't just on ownership. And you guys know me. I side with the players 99% of the time. I don't think Tim Fertitta's a great owner, but James Harden has to look in the mirror. You had Dwight Howard, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook. I don't think I'm leaving anybody else out, but you had all these guys in their primes. Couldn't do anything. Like, it's nobody else's fault that you guys shot 27 3-pointers and missed them, or missed 27 3-pointers against the Golden State Warriors and ended up losing that series. Like, you have to look at yourself in the mirror. I don't know about Harden. Like, he's a bad... Like, when his mind is right, he can drop 40 or 50 on the best of them. But the real question for Brooklyn is, like, does Kyrie want to be the third option? Because make no mistake, Kyrie Irving is the third option on this team. I mean, it's Kevin Durant's team. Let's also be really clear about that. He's the best player on the team. If he's healthy, he's the best player on the team. And then there's James Harden. Like, there's 2 guys on this team with MVPs. I mean, Harden doesn't have a ring. Kyrie's got that. And KD has an MVP and the rings. But make no mistake, James Harden is the second best player on this team. Bethany, good point. Carmelo was there too. Carmelo was there in Houston, and a lot of people blame Carmelo. Like, Houston did everything they could to help Harden. And, last night when Harden was like, hey, I've done everything I can for the city of Houston. I love the city, blah, blah, blah. Like, now Houston brought in every player that you wanted. Houston went small to acquiesce to your style of play. You wanted to run ISOs all day. You wanted to do dribble step backs and shoot threes, or only get to the free throw line, or to the front of the rim. Houston played the way that made James Harden look really, really good. And ultimately it fell apart. And so the thing with the Nets are, like, if it does not work, and look, you had to go for it. Like, you had to do this thing. But if it does not work, you've given up all these pick swaps. Like, where is it at? I'm just looking at my Twitter feed so I can find out exactly what 3 first rounders and 2022, 24, and 26. 4 first round pick swaps in 2021, 23, 25, and 27. If you're the Nets, I guess you had to do this thing. Like, there was no way around it. But, man, as a Lakers fan, I just don't care. I don't. The Lakers are going to end up repeating this season. I don't care what anybody in the East does. The Lakers are going to repeat. LeBron James is still playing at an MVP level. Anthony Davis is still playing at an All-Defensive Player of the Year level. They got guys like Dennis Schroeder, who has really fit in with this team much quicker than we thought. His defense is much better than we thought. Trez, the Lakers are putting Trez in a better defensive position than the Clippers ever did. He's playing much better for the Lakers on both sides. I mean, then you got guys like Marc Gasol. For all the Lakers fans that complain that Marc Gasol, was old and slow and we needed a rim protector, Marc Gasol is one of the top players in blocks. The Lakers are 6th in blocks, guys. 6th in blocks. Like, let me look at some of the comments here, man. Yes, Shazab, we're chilling. Like, what is there to worry about? What is there to worry about with the Nets? Was it Rawsire, Lakers in 4? What's up, Lizzo? How bad is the Nets defense? I don't know who the Nets are going to stop. Now, they're going to score a ton of points. Like, there are going to be nights where the Nets put up like 130. But for the Lakers, now the thing about the Nets is they've got Mike D'Antoni sitting on that bench, right? And he knows James Harden's game. He was the architect of that season around that system around James Harden. But, beyond that, like, Steve Nash is a rookie coach. It's been reported today already that Kyrie Irving did not like the Steve Nash hire, that he wanted more input in that hire. So there's still that friction, and I think that has a lot to do with why Nash, when Kyrie first kind of stepped away from the team, Nash could have been like, oh, we're taking care of it in-house. We knew he was leaving. But Nash was like, I didn't know about it. I didn't know Kyrie was leaving the team. Nash threw Kyrie under the bus, rightfully so. If Kyrie doesn't want Steve Nash to coach that team, to me, Kyrie's got to go. And, I mean, look, it's just in terms of interior defense, the Nets got DeAndre Jordan. But all the Lakers would do against him is pull him out the paint. Marc Gasol is going to pull him right out the paint. And then what? I saw one lineup that had Jeff Green at center. Good luck, Jeff Green guarding Anthony Davis. And so, this is all, look, good for the NBA, because the other sports leagues, Major League Baseball, the NFL, they can only dream to kind of have this off-court stuff going on where there's all this attention placed on their leagues. The Lakers do it better than everybody. I mean, I'm sorry, the NBA does it better than everybody. And you're right, Bethany, maybe their best defender is Bruce Brown. But, like, the Nets are going all in on this. And if you guys remember a few years ago, maybe it's more than a few years ago now, but when the Nets kind of went all in with Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, and I can't remember who else was on that team. But they were all in back then, and they traded away all those picks and all this stuff, and then you saw what happened. They had nothing for years after that team kind of tanked. So, make no mistake, this team is better than that. Like, the guys that they got are in their prime, but you have to give up what you have to give up to get better. And I don't know. Let me look at what their record is. 'Cause I don't even know what their record is right now. Um, Let me see here. Nah, man. Lakers don't need Kyrie. Lakers don't need Kyrie. Like, someone asked me on Twitter earlier, what would you give up if Kyrie wanted to come to the Lakers? The Lakers are so far and hit the best team in the NBA. Like, they don't need someone like Kyrie. They really don't. So I wouldn't give up anything. I mean, look, Harden is good at guarding guys in the paint. Like, he's actually a really good post defender. He's not as bad on defense as you think, but he's out of shape right now. He's clearly overweight. Maybe this propels him to want to kind of reinvest himself, but who knows? And yeah, Shazeb, you're right. Like, all of this assumes the Nets stay healthy. Like, Kyrie Irving, when was the last time he played 82 games? Now, granted, the season is shorter, but he's already missed games. Kevin Durant has been out the last year. He's finally back, and he looks good when he's playing, but, like, this assumes that he's back at 100%. This assumes that Kyrie is back, focused on basketball. This assumes that James Harden is going to work his way back into shape. I don't know. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of assumptions being made here. Like, I think one of the reasons the Nets made this deal, I'm looking at the NBA standings. They're 6-6. They're 500. Dinwiddie's already out for the season. Kyrie's already missing games for his own personal reasons. They had to, if they were already in it to win it, like, they had to go for it this year. And so, being 500 with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on your roster, they had to swing for the fences, and now they brought in now they brought in James Harden, and I don't know what that does for this team. Like, I really don't know. But, like, they're behind the Magic, they're behind the Hornets. The Pacers, I don't know what the Pacers are doing. Like, they were fourth in the East, or tied for third with the Bucks. Like, I don't know what they're gonna do. But I also feel like this may have been an opportunity for the 76ers to get better. Maybe they should have got this thing done, and they didn't. They missed out. So where does that leave them? Um, so yeah, Lizzo, there are people saying Kyrie might not be back, and all that speculation right now. I mean, we don't know. We have no idea what's going on with Kyrie Irving. Like, we don't know if he wanted this trade. We don't know if this might force him to come back. Hell, Kyrie could be saying, "Oh, we got James Harden. I can take off more days. I can take off more games." Like, we really don't know what the situation is with Kyrie Irving. So there's so much going on with this team. But again, from the Lakers standpoint, we're focused on the Western Conference and getting back to the NBA Finals. And if Brooklyn is good enough and they get to the NBA Finals, that's when we'll look at how good that team really is, and if they're truly a challenge to what LeBron and Anthony Davis and the Lakers are building out in LA. But right now, Nets are seventh in the East. Like, when you bring in a superstar, sometimes that means you got to rearrange how your team is set up, and clearly bringing in Harden rearranges this team, right? So they've got to figure out a way to kind of make Harden feel at home. They've got to make sure that he gets along with Kevin Durant and Kyrie. I'm sure Kevin Durant signed off on this. The question is, did Kyrie? Because it's been reported today that the Nets have had limited contact with Kyrie Irving. So, hey, this is an interesting one. This is an interesting one for the NBA. And I don't know. Like, really ask you guys, ask yourself this question. Is Milwaukee, are they still better than the Nets? Probably right now they are. And you're right, Shazam, just throwing talent together doesn't mean that you're going to automatically win. Like, it takes time. It always takes time. So, like I said, I've seen people say, like, that fans are mad at this trade. I don't know. I don't know if that's true. Maybe. I'm looking through my timeline. I don't really see people really caring. At least not Lakers fans, who mostly follow me. I don't see people caring. Hey, Rodney, and you're right, man. I mean, look, the Nets lost their depth. I mean, they got Joe Harris. He's still there, and they kept DeAndre. But I don't know. Maybe this gets them through the East. I don't know. Like, so much of this, for all these teams, success this season hinges on health maybe more than any other year. But as Lakers fans, we're not worried about that at all. No, we're not worried about that at all. Like, I don't. Good for the Nets. This gets them in the headlines. Again, this means they don't need to rush Kyrie back, whatever's going on with him. Again, he's probably going to have to sit out 10 to 14 days whenever he returns. but they've already said he's going to be out at least for the rest of this week. And I mean, look, the question being asked in the comments: who's going to double team both KD and Harden? Well, look, this isn't the first time that we've had teams with two good scores. Usually that's par for the course. But so much of this really depends on them acclimating Harden as quickly as possible, getting Kyrie reinvested in the team, all these guys' health. Not so much Harden, but really KD and Kyrie's health. After that, all right, let's see what they got. Let's see if the Nets are really built to go up against a team like the Lakers. Because right now the Lakers are toying with everybody else. And frankly, the Lakers broke Houston. They broke Houston's back in the final. In the second round last season. You just crushed them in back-to-back games the other night. I'm not worried. I'm just good for the NBA. There's another storyline. Good for the Nets. They got another guy. To me, this just shows you need 3 guys to beat LeBron. Harden's definitely got to get in shape. Harden looking like he's a Big Mac away from needing a bigger jersey. I don't know what's going on with James Harden. He clearly didn't want to be in Houston. And I said it earlier this morning. They had to get this trade done sooner than later, and they got it done. So good for Houston, good for James Harden, whatever. They got it done. But I'm gonna sign off, guys. For any Lakers fans out there that might be concerned, don't be. The Lakers will get better in the buyout market. Frankly, the Lakers are as good a team as any out there right now. They really don't need to do anything. There's the tweaks and things they need to do, but continuity matters. And for the Lakers to have upgraded the way that they did with Montrez, 6th man of the year, Schroeder, who was the runner-up to 6th man last year. They brought a big man in Gasol who could pass and stretch the floor. They've got high IQ guys. LeBron James is still playing at an MVP level, as is Anthony Davis. The Lakers are fine. I mean, the Lakers are fine. I'm sure LeBron's going to be asked about this, and Anthony Davis will be asked about this later today when they do their post-game interviews with Thunder or whatever. But Nets in 6, King, you crazy? You're absolutely crazy. Maybe against one of the Eastern Conference teams, but against the Lakers aren't worried about the Nets. Good for them. Good for them. When Golden State was Golden State, LeBron was able to steal one away from them. LeBron's got Anthony Davis. This Lakers team is fine. That's why I'm this is a reaction podcast, I guess, if you will. That's why you don't hear me yelling and screaming, getting all out of character like some people do in their reactions to these big NBA blockbusters. This is cool. There's a team out in the East that picked up another MVP. Good for them. If anything, this impacts the East. In terms of the Western Conference, we're not worried. And Dante, you're right. Lakers are too deep. It's too deep right now. And not to mention, they're going to pick up veterans in the buyout market. Every year we see this. Every year, teams who think they have a shot at the playoffs end up not making the playoffs, and they start mortgaging their guys off, either via trade or they buy them out. And those veterans who want to go for a ring always sign with contenders. And what better contender is there with the Lakers, who there are no issues in LA? Kuz talked about it. All these guys are taking the pandemic seriously because nobody wants to screw up the Lakers having an opportunity to repeat. Why would you want to be the guy to screw that up for the Lakers? The Lakers are the most stable franchise in the NBA at this point. The most stable franchise. Think about that for a second. You think about teams like San Antonio, that's been consistent, for 2 decades, and there's never any media drama. The Lakers are as consistent as San Antonio, yet they play in the second largest media market in the world, with the biggest star in the world. And there's no issues. There's no drama. They go on about their business. They're the only team in the NBA with the best, ranked in the top 5 in offense and defense. The Lakers have no holes. None whatsoever. There are tweaks. When you have a legit championship contender like you do with the Lakers, you don't make wholesale changes. The reason why the Nets are making wholesale changes is because they don't believe they got a championship contender, or they did not believe they had a championship contender. They were 6-6, especially with Kyrie just leaving the team the way that he did. They did not believe they had a championship contender. So good for the Nets. Like, let me go back to Twitter real quick and see if anything has changed. Like, like shout out to Mimi. I don't think she's in the chat, but she's on Twitter. She said we have LeBron. Like, we don't fear any team. We have LeBron and Anthony Davis. Why would we fear the Nets? The Nets fear the Lakers. That's why they make a trade for James Harden. That's exactly why. So if you're someone that thinks that the Nets are better, remember everyone said that about the Lakers last year when the Clippers, they got Kawhi and Paul George, and everyone said the Clippers are better than the Lakers. And what happened? They fell apart. They brought that team together quickly. They didn't build the kind of camaraderie and bond that you need to go through, not just winning a championship, but kind of make it through this crazy season. And they lost to Denver. The Clippers were a much better team than Denver, and they lost to a team that had better camaraderie. So, good for the Nets. What's up, Adrian, man? Appreciate you jumping in the comments. Look, like I said, you don't make this trade for Harden if you think that you have a championship team. You only do it when you think that you don't. And that's what the Nets have done. Like, look, guys, I know that there's a generation of fans that saw Golden State with Steph, Clay, and Draymond, and then get Kevin Durant. And for some people that felt like that's what you need to do to win championships. Throughout history, generally you need two superstars and a third guy that could have a good night here and there. Shaq and Kobe won all their championships with the two alpha guys on the basketball court. And, 1 year with Glenn Rice, who happened to be an all-star. And then after that, guys like Derek Fisher, Rick Fox, Robert Horry. Those guys stepped up and helped the Lakers win championships. Like, you look at the Heat. They had 3 stars. They had 2 superstars and then Bosh that was an all-star level guy. But by and large, you don't need 3 superstars. It ends up being overkill for most teams. If the Lakers thought they needed a 3rd star, they would have went and got a 3rd star. They proved last year that they are the best team in the NBA. And they happened to get better this offseason, adding 2 guys who were, one was a 6th man and one was a runner-up. And then they filled the roster out. Like you saw what Rob Pelinka did in a shortened offseason, where he had to trade everything to get Anthony Davis, and then, he was waiting on Kawhi, and he had to fill the roster out. And look at this season, when he had time to kind of build the roster out around Anthony Davis and LeBron James. They happen to be first in the West. First in NBA. So, all eyes are on Brooklyn. So be it. They play in the largest media market in the world. Brooklyn has managed to get stars in a way that the Knicks have not. And this is not me bashing the Knicks at all. It's the truth. So, maybe it was Brooklyn's intent to just outshine the Knicks. Good. The Knicks haven't been good in like 35 years. So, or no, longer than that. Like 40 years. Mimi, what up? Lakers in 5. No doubt. And the Lakers are just fine. Like, win or lose tonight against the Thunder, the Lakers are going to do their thing. And Shazeb, you're right. Caruso, Matthews, Schroeder. Like, the Lakers have everything that they need. They will make tweaks in the buyout market. If a trade is there to be had, they'll bring somebody in. But, like, look at the Lakers scouting department. Guys like THT, who is already contributing in his 2nd year. He wasn't a lottery pick, and he's already contributing. So I'm going to jump off here, guys, and jump back on later with Vinay. But make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. Really appreciate you guys tuning in for this reaction. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at LakerCentral365. Also follow us on Instagram at LakerCentral365. And you can follow me directly if you want on Twitter at Alex Holling. So I'm going to get out of here, guys. I'll catch you guys later at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern for the pregame. Lakers in 5.